All right, so you are here for another broadcast of Strategy Sunday with Dr. Ken. I'm your host, Dr. Ken Richmond, board certified psychiatrist, veteran, and corporate leadership coach. I help corporate leaders pinpoint leadership issues so we can develop thriving workplaces with less turnover, improved workplace morale, and increased organizational performance. Today, we're going to be talking about yet another word or a letter from the alphabet. The word is going to be the V word, an undeniable business requirement. So, as usual, I like to get my audience to participate and give me some of their suggestions for what the word can possibly be for today, because it helps to set up a level of engagement that puts a smile on my face and keeps the conversation moving forward. So, what are some of the guesses you guys have for the V word today? And as usual, we like to keep things PC and PG. So, let's see what words we come up with today. And keep in mind the question that was asked, are you and your place of employment like-minded? So how does a V word tie into that question? Let's see what are some of our thoughts, some of the comments are. What do we think the V word is today? All right, while you guys continue to ponder that thought, let's see. So you got Susan's always hate to miss it. Okay, all right. All right, so the V word that we're going to be talking about today is values. Values. We're going to be talking about the V word is values. Values, as I will define it today, is a set of beliefs that guide personal and organizational behavior. Again, a set of beliefs that guide personal and organizational behavior. Do we think that this is a pertinent word for us to discuss at this time? Having values, right? Going back to the question, if you and your employer are like-minded, i.e. have similar values, is that an employer you find that you tend to engage with more or you engage with less, right? Typically, when there's an alignment between what the employer and what the employee has, if they're the same or similar, then there tends to be a lot of alignment and engagement. So in other words, there are going to be a lot of benefits. And as you can imagine, if there's not sufficient alignment, there could be some costs associated with that. And we'll get to some of the benefits and costs, and I'll be obviously interested in reading what your comments are as well. In doing some of the kind of the background research to get to today's topic, I came across a website by Visual Capitalist, where they identified a number of things that people find valuable. And it actually broke it down by country. So anywhere from Africa to Europe to the United States, North America, it broke it down. It actually gave a kind of a scale of where that country rated that value, that element of value. But I wanted to mention the top 5 that I took from that. So it's the top 5 of the world's most influential values. The top 5 of the world's most influential values are: 1, family; 2, relationships; 3, financial security; 4, belonging; and 5, community. I picked the top 5 because I think those are really pertinent. They apply to a lot of individuals. If you're think of a relationship, if you're going to be with somebody who values family and you value family, there's an alignment there versus the opposite. I mean, we can really see how if somebody doesn't have the same values as you do, there can be some difficulties and some strained relationships that you're going to be encountering, right? If you're valuing your financial security at this point in time and another person may not be, again, can cause some misalignment there and some problems can follow. So that's something for us to think about when we look at value, right? So we have value, our value. So Susan says, our value is definitely a pertinent discussion. Yes. So let's transition into what are some of the benefits of values? What does it do? Why do we even care about it? Well, let me mention a few. And as we go through the benefits, just kind of Brainstorm, put it in the comments. What are some of your thoughts in terms of the benefits of values? I will offer the following. One, it assists in how culture, organizational culture shifts, or how organizational culture can change. Just think of it this way. If people have the same or similar value system, or they value the same things, then change is easier to facilitate, right? Having benefit, another benefit of value is that it increases productivity. Imagine a train that's moving forward and then you have other things that are pulling in the opposite direction. A train is not going to get very far, right? However, if everybody's aligned, if everybody values the same thing, forward movement, right? You know, dealing with a problem, but also learning from it and moving forward versus holding grudges, right? That's one way that having a value system that's in full alignment with your employer can help move things forward and help to increase productivity. Having similar values or same values allows you to have increased engagement. Now, this is very different than shared values. That's another term we can get into for another topic. But again, we're focusing on values, you know, what an organization has identified and how that matches with your personal beliefs. Because again, we're defining values as a set of beliefs that guide personal and organizational behavior. Lastly, I want to mention that another benefit of having values is that it makes your strategic initiatives more effective. The recurring theme that I saw here is that once there's an alignment between your value system, no matter what the relationship is, if it's an employer, within an organization, a division, once there is that alignment and similar value system, things tend to move forward, things tend to remain in agreement. What are some of your thoughts regarding the benefits of values? As you guys put that in the comment section, I'm going to transition into some of the costs associated with lack or having unclear values. How many of us can right now rattle off or state the values of the organization that we're working with? Right? Makes you think. How present is that information in our workplace? Do we have a card that has the values on it? Is it a note in our phone, email, or a wallpaper on our desktop? I would say unlikely, right? But it's one of those things that we need to have in the forefront of our thinking because it helps us understand why we're where we are and why we're doing what we're doing. So let me talk about some of the costs of having unclear values. One is disengagement. I'm bored. You know, this job doesn't do it for me anymore. I'm disconnecting. The stress level is high. I need some time off. You know, if your value system is time off and your work system is, or the value system of work is work, 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 there's going to be a disconnect, and that individual or employee would want to disengage. Have anybody been disengaged lately? Have you reviewed your value system to see if there's an alignment issue versus simply saying that it's stress? Nice to take a deeper look at that. Okay, I encourage you to do that. There's misaligned, there's misinformed decision making. If you're making a decision based on a value system that is at odds with your employer or your organization or your senior leadership, right, there can be some serious consequences. It may cause you to have multiple meetings where I wanted, the meeting may go something like this. I wanted to remind you of, what we do at this organization X. We focus on these particular things. However, that decision was not in line with how we typically want to present ourselves to the marketplace or to our competitors. Right? We can see how that level of misalignment can misinform and misguide or misinform that decision. Right? That guided thought process is totally off track. Speaking of off track, another cost of having unclear values is that it can derail strategic goals. It is not on track. Literally, the term says derail. It's whatever process you had in place, whatever strategic initiative you were putting forth is no longer on track. So how do we get it back on track? We have to refocus on those values, make them clear, because it may not be clear. Let me see what some of our thoughts from my guests are today. So one, we have Susan says values help. Uh, Values help you find your purpose. Totally agree with that that comment. Thank you for putting that in there. Lack of values leads to poor decision making. Okay, give me some emphasis there. Good interview question. Okay, so all right, so we got some learning going on. I'm adding hopefully some value. I appreciate you guys taking that to heart and actually putting it out there so I can see it in real time. So right now we're going to transition into my tips and strategies for building values. Are we ready? All right, so you are listening to a broadcast of Strategy Sunday with Dr. Ken. I'm your host, Dr. Ken, board certified psychiatrist, veteran, and corporate leadership coach. I help leaders pinpoint leadership issues so we can develop thriving workplaces with less turnover, improve workplace morale, and increase organizational performance. My 3 tips and strategies to build values are: 1, create organizational health; 2, be deliberate in communicating; and 3, mock it and try it. All right, so let's take a deeper dive into the first one, create organizational health. When we talk about having values, we also have to talk about things being in balance. So when we find balance, balance is needed in everything that we do. It's actually essential to our personal growth, and as you can imagine, to organizational growth. So one of the things I would encourage organizations to do, specific, if it's HR, human resources professionals, or just that, supervisor who is fully engaged with their staff, assess if there's an unhealthy culture in the organization or in your unit or in your division. Make planned or, just regular visits to certain units, certain offices to figure out what they need instead of focusing on what they're not doing or what they're not doing right. Focus on what they need, focus on being so harsh or hard on them for not doing something or not doing something right. It's an opportunity to learn if the culture needs to shift or if it's the employees that need to shift. Again, going back to finding the balance between values, between the personal and the organizational goals. So think of this example as well. It's like, doctor, going to the doctor once a year for your annual checkup. Provided you followed all the recommendations, you stayed healthy, you followed all the, the things that you were you're told to do or instructed to do, then you may have a healthy status. However, if you don't, if you just kind of let things happen as they may, let's say you're, drinking heavier than usual, it's going to cause some consequences, right? You're going to take a toll on your health. If they said exercise and you didn't exercise and you didn't manage your weight, you're going to have more weight, and that can cause some other health issues. So the same thing can happen with the organization, because as you can imagine, the organization is a living creature, a living being, a living entity. It is made up of people, the human capital. Okay? Companies that are healthy on all fronts will outlast the challenges that are undoubtedly going to happen. So let's focus on creating organizational health. The second tip, be deliberate in communicating. So we want to avoid perpetuating the impression that organizations simply offer lip service. We don't want that anymore, right? We want to be intentional about what is being said and how it is being said. With this strategy, you want to communicate in a clear, concise, and consistent manner. So we can just call this the 3 C's, right? Clear, concise, and consistent. One thing you can do, we can consider doing, is to determine the frequency of, let's say you have a newsletter, determine the frequency of how often that needs to go out. Is it once a month? Is it every quarter? Every organization will be different. But what information are you going to be communicating in that newsletter? One thing to think about is that as you create the content, create some hyperlinks so that if folks want to do some additional reading, there's a resource for them to go to versus the need to put all that information in a newsletter and employees may not read it. So think of a ideal length, maybe 1 to 2 pages. If we can really, really hone in on the high points, create those hyperlinks to where the other additional readings can be found, that would be great. You may also want to update your intranet. That's an important communication tool within organizations. So now that we're all working remotely for the most part, once an employee signs in remotely, perhaps the intranet is the first page that shows up. Perhaps that's the first web page that comes up when they open their browser, the intranet. Make that a company, make it set so folks can't change it. Set that as a home page. And that you can communicate things in a very concise, consistent, and clear manner using that method. Colors tend to stand out. Yellow. Whenever someone sees a yellow highlighted section, it usually draws your eyes to it. Or red. Danger, 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 or caution. Think of driving. I always use that as an example in my in my clinical encounters. Okay. So again, think of those things and other strategies that you may consider when it comes to being able to communicate, to be more deliberate in communicating. So re-engaging the organization at all levels will help to marry the values that you're asserting with your mission and your vision. And all those things, again, they will need to be in alignment. Third tip and strategy, mock it and try it. I know this one is so fun. Mock it and try it. So when you talk about mocking, I believe folks tend to emulate the things that they like. They emulate the things that they like. Can you think of one thing that you tend to mock? One person, right? That you tend to mock. And yes, it could be funny, but the fact is you like certain aspects of what that behavior, what that portrayal is, such that you want to emulate it. Maybe subconsciously you're doing that, but nonetheless, the end result is still the same. You're still mocking it. So the key here now is to try it. So if there are behaviors your people are mocking, take the position to kind of tease out or kind of look for that common thread of what part of that mocking behavior is most useful to you. Once you identify that, recognize a person that they're mocking. Say, hey, you may not have to tell them that you're being mocked. I think that's gonna probably take away from the conversation. But perhaps just figure out what parts of that interaction is pertinent to that workplace. I can tell you. Let's use me as an example. So one of the things I would say to my staff at times is, let's say they're coming to me with a question. My first question to them is, do you need a moment to gather your thoughts? And it's just like, it would be the way that I say it, because if somebody's rushing up to you, they're going to be out of breath. You're going to say, hey, do you need a moment to gather your thoughts? You want to have something coherent, right? Clear, concise, but yeah, just definitely coherent. And I've gone past offices where I hear them say, do you need a moment to gather your thoughts? It's hilarious to me to hear other people say it, but it seems to be something that's resonating with them. So yes, do we need a moment to gather our thoughts? If we do, pause, gather our thoughts, and then proceed. But you can now recognize the fact that we want to have communication that's clear. Kind of goes back to that second tip that I presented. And another thing that the staff may comment on is, what's the other question? It said, so what do we have planned for today? What do we have planned for today? I.e., what's the agenda? Do we have some set expectations? Because we know there's going to be some crises happening. But what do we know? What's within our control as of 8 a.m. every morning? Right? So think of those things. Focus on the individuals or behaviors that seem to be mocking. Don't look at it so much as a negative. Try to pull out that positive thread from it and highlight that. If you have somebody who's saying they're mocking somebody, hey, you got to be on time. You got to be on time. If that person is always on time, recognize the fact that they're timely with their meetings, timely with their reports, timely with with communication, just highlight that positive element that you're seeing. All right. Let's see what some of the my guests have been saying over here in this chat. So we have individuals laughing at mocking it. Well, it's supposed to be fun, right? Fun strategies tend to, they tend to resonate more, and people try to, they try them out a lot more too. So that's always helpful, right? Why give a strategy or tip if folks can't use it? It has to be easy to use and easy to remember. All right, so I'll let you guys get on with the Sunday. But this is Dr. Ken Richmond, board certified psychiatrist, veteran and corporate leadership coach. I help leaders pinpoint leadership issues so we can develop thriving workplaces with less turnover, improve workplace morale, and increase organizational performance. You have been listening to another episode of Strategy Sunday with Dr. Ken. You can follow me by liking my page at facebook.com/Dr. Ken Richmond. That's DrKenRichmond.